Do you think the typical agency client person actually understands the large technical differences between desktop and mobile today?
Well, you center on agencies, but I'd just say, in general, practitioners don't really understand it, with agencies being a part of that. And really, kind of, it's shame on all of us for not highlighting it more. There are some very real issues. If you just take viewability, before I talk about viewability and get everybody scared about it, the thing that you should know is viewability is the first stage in a multi-stage process that 3MS has laid out. So first, we want to make ads viewable of all types. We also want to have standards for an audience-based currency. And then we also want to focus on engagement metrics that matter to marketers. And you've just seen a whole slew of them this morning. So 3MS is working down that continuum. You have to knock off viewability. But when you're dealing with mobile, it's a very, very different environment. So some of the tools that we rely on for mobile and desktop, for example, browser optimization signaling, it really isn't operable in the mobile environment well. Like if you take the iOS environment, you can't use Flash. A lot of that browser optimization signaling is Flash dependent. And things like managing power in the device, where we're used to really communicating viewability status on an ongoing basis. You need to redesign to do that in mobile, or else you'll wear out people's batteries, quicker than they want to, and get them really angry at us all.
So like a week and a half ago at the IAB town hall, a lot of this came up, right?
Yes.
And it was, I think, pretty shocking for the audience. I don't think everybody in the room realized that the technology behind mobile viewability is completely different from desktop. Yes. And I think people don't realize how much harder it's going to be than desktop. What do you think that, it did take a long time for 3MS and for desktop to coalesce around a standard. Ned Newhouse has been very vocal about this. A lot of publishers have been. There's talk about creative. There's talk about all these issues. Should the creative be better? But if we can't even tell if it's viewable technically, how much harder is that going to make the short-term landscape for publishers and agencies in the room to trade if there really isn't people were assuming they could take that desktop standard and move it over. I think it was a shocking town hall, shocking as test can be, right?
Yes, measurement gets.
Measurement shocking. I mean, it wasn't like Walking Dead shocking. It was just, measurement shocking. Go with me. It's a Monday. Come on. It snowed on Saturday. We're all frustrated here. It's cold. But I mean, how is that going to affect the short-term landscape? I mean, people thought they could trade on this. They can't now.
Yeah, people are going to trade on what they can, but I can tell you that we have a long way to go before we're able to standardize it. As we went over in the town hall, I mentioned the Flash situation, power management, the use of focus, and how mobile apps work. The whole app environment is extremely complex. You're relying on these things called SDKs largely to do custom signaling. So the bottom line of this is it's going to take us a little while. I don't think it's going to take us as long as it took from start to finish in desktop, because we've already learned a ton.
Right.
And we're going to be able to apply much of that here. But to standardize the tech is going to be critical. But there's also a critical second phase, which is to understand how users interact with the device. Because one of the things we did when we set the desktop viewability standard is we studied through billions of impressions how people interacted with ads in a desktop environment. So we had to learn how to set that threshold. Many of you may scratch your head going, well, how did the MRC pick 2 seconds and 50% of the pixels for video ads? Well, that had a huge basis of analysis behind it. And the truth is, if an ad is 50% of the pixels in view for 2 seconds, it's maybe 80% likely to be 100% in view. And we looked at that and those curves when we set that threshold. We haven't done any of that in mobile yet.
Yeah.
And those environments and the nature of the ads and scrolling and swiping and all the different things that can occur need to be analyzed.
So 2 quick follow-ups on what you just said. It's important stuff, I think, for everybody in the audience. First one, so really right now, no one can technically be in process for mobile viewability at this point because we don't really have that defined, correct?
There's nobody accredited for mobile viewability. That is absolutely correct. However, there are people that are aspiring to be accredited for mobile viewability, and they've already begun talking to us and submitting products. But we have standards to develop.
Right, you haven't even developed the standards for them to accredit to.
That's right. So people are showing us their tech, and that's a very important thing too, because we get on the inside and learn about it.
So I do want to follow up on the last point you just made, because I learned that at the breakfast that you had, the town hall. I think it's important for everybody in this room to understand. I heard a lot of feedback about the desktop standard and the 2 seconds. People are like, 2 seconds, you know, you got television, you watch the full ad, if it isn't the 30, you get credit for it, all this stuff. I don't think people realize the science behind the fact that if you get that 2 seconds, 80% of the ads are fully viewable. So you guys really were looking at a ton of data. Where did you get that data from?
People gave it to us, practitioners gave it to us. Number one, that's probably the largest source, but then also we conducted, with the help of the IAB and others, like agencies and marketers, we conducted pilot testing with real live ads out in the wild to see how people interacted with them. These are billions and billions of impressions that we looked at to set this. And a point is, just for any of the partners in the room, you guys operate under strict secrecy, so you don't share any data with anybody else. Everything that comes into the MRC is never attributed to a third party or anyone else. And we've had people push on us really hard about this. We never attribute data. So your secrets are very, very safe with us. What did we learn from the process to get viewability in desktop that's going to help make this process, even though it's technically harder, how did we learn stuff to make it easier for us to get it sooner? Because I think the marketplace wants it. Yeah, I think the marketplace thinks this is a much more personal device, and they want us to get there faster. I totally agree with you, and it is. All of that is. So first of all, you're all to be congratulated for being in this forum, because this is a powerful medium, and it's terrific. We're going to try our best to do some standards that don't hurt anything. But we learned a lot in doing desktop. I mean, one is to educate and communicate better. We, like, you know, the revelations of the science behind how we set those standards are still not well known enough, in my opinion, for desktop. We need to communicate more. We have town hall meetings every time we can. Even tomorrow we have a big town hall meeting with the 4As, and you know, we tried to issue advisories, marketplace guidance. We need to publicize that better, and we need to get more and more people to participate. I think just on the surface, if you think about desktop web pages, they haven't changed much. But if you think about all the different variations of apps and mobile, you know, utility coming at consumers, it's extremely dynamic. We have a ton of work to do to learn from the marketplace. So desktop's been around for 18 years, almost 20 years. Some people say more than 20. How do we, not just viewability, how do we correct some of the mistakes we made in desktop, you know, with better standards in mobile? For example, we count an impression in mobile much closer to the view than in desktop. Is there anything else like that that we can do to help make the advertisers in the room and the clients in the room and the agencies feel like their dollars? You know, everybody talks about fraud and other things. There's a whole new group that talks about that. But how do we make people feel more comfortable? The numbers Anna showed, viewership is up, time spent is up, spend isn't up. How do we make them feel, the marketers feel that they're going to get closer to the people seeing their ads with standards that don't get in the way, but then help make it more possible? Yes, Richie raised an excellent point. Rambling, but. No, I think it's perfect. We learned a lot in setting the desktop viewability standards, especially reconciling viewability vendors together. So one thing that's not going to go away is you're going to have a lot of vendors in this space. We basically told the world that we're going to do viewable, and we're going to do viewable in mobile. So you're going to have a lot of vendors gravitate towards that. We've already learned a lot about how to keep counts consistent between vendors. In fact, we've released a lot of guidance on that in desktop. I think a lot of that guidance, even in the unique mobile environment, is applicable. So you raised one, counting closer to you know, the actual ad being viewed. Like in desktop, we had to totally change, and we're trying to eliminate certain counting methodologies that were acceptable, that shouldn't be any longer acceptable for a viewability standpoint. That we already know, so we can move that guidance into mobile. Fortunately, most mobile is closer, but there are other things. There's maybe 8 or 9 points that we already learned that we'll be rolling out mostly in mobile also.